Speaking on behalf of the Global Forest Coalition and the ICCA Consortium, we wish to support the statements of IPLCs and the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. Our first remarks concern the integration of biodiversity and climate change. We are concerned that the majority of MBSAP's and fifth national reports, as well as PAUPA action plans, have not sufficiently addressed matters related to climate change. In general, we encourage parties to better integrate and report on climate change throughout the work of the CBD, with the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and women. Conversely, when UNFCCC parties and other governments are developing their nationally determined contributions and implementing associated domestic measures, we encourage them to ensure the integrity of all ecosystems and the protection of biodiversity, and integrate ecosystem-based approaches with the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and women. Secondly, we have some specific text suggestions for the draft voluntary guidelines on ecosystem-based approaches to climate change adaptation, or EBA, and disaster risk reduction, ECO-DRR, as contained in the annex to the draft decision. Indigenous peoples and local communities have managed variability, uncertainty, and change over many generations. Traditional territories, knowledge, resilience, and coping strategies thus form an important basis for climate change and disaster risk reduction responses. Although the voluntary guidelines contain information related to Indigenous peoples and local communities, as requested by COP13, there is no specific reference to them in the main body of the draft decision. In paragraph 3 of the draft decision, we kindly request parties to consider adding the following new text, which is intended as a complement to the suggestions proposed by IPLCs. 3A bis, to seek the free, prior, and informed consent and ensure the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities in the design, implementation, and monitoring of EBA and ECO-DRR. 3C bis, to appropriately recognize and support the governance, management, and conservation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, territories, and areas, including traditional and local knowledge, practices, and institutions, as part of climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. And finally, 3D bis, to ensure that EBA and ECO-DRR activities do not contribute to drivers of biodiversity loss, such as the introduction of invasive alien species or unsustainable forestry and agriculture. We would appreciate the support of any parties in this regard. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.